Good day, everyone. I am Kyle Paul, and welcome to Between the Brackets. This month on our show, I am joined by Mike Pegg, Head of Developer Relations at Google for the Google Maps team, and very excited to have him. And we're going to be talking all about the Google Maps platform, and a lot of history, developer history behind it, and a lot of cool new features that were recently announced. So I'm very excited to have Mike join me here in a second. As a reminder, this is a live show with real experts talking about fun and interesting niche developer topics. Feel free to invite others to join the show and tune in live. Make sure to ask your questions over on the side in the YouTube live chat. We'll get them featured. And let us know what you'd like to cover next time by filling out our survey, goo.gle/btb-survey. You can let us know what you thought about this episode, as well as what you'd like to see in future episodes. And with that, I'd like to welcome Mike Pegg to the stage. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Going well, Kyle. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. It's very excited to have you. Very excited to learn a lot more about Google Maps. But go ahead and let us know, what you do at Google. What's your current role like?
Sure. So my role at Google is leading developer relations for the Google Maps platform team. There are several developer products at Google. Google Maps platform is one of them, and there's a lot of developer relations teams that many of which have been on your show. And yeah, we're basically set up to help developers get going with Google Maps APIs and Google Maps platform tools and the platform in general. So we're tech writers, we're developers or engineers, basically people helping developers get going, with samples and documentation and all that fun stuff. So that's my role. We sit within the Maps team, within the Geo team, which we call it internally at Google. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yes. And there's a lot of cool and interesting things that the Google Maps team has done throughout the years. One of my favorites was like the Road to I/O, where you using Google Maps to code to Google I/O. There's the bus that traveled across the different countries. So Google Maps has been around for quite some time, and you've been with the team for quite some time. Do you want to give us a little bit of back history and where you've seen the team come from to now?
Yeah, I would say I've been with the team and also just with the product and the technology, I think, for even longer. I think it was something that I think if I describe this, everybody sort of knows the first time that they used Google Maps or maybe Google Earth. And for me, it quite literally was life-changing. It was one of those things where mapping technology at the time when Google Maps first came out was pretty rudimentary. It was, a static map that was drawn on the screen, and to move, to quote, move around the map was very difficult. You had to find a little thin ribbon on the side of the map to move to the right or the left of where these tiles were. And along came Google Maps. And for me, I'm a bit of a map, geek. As a kid, had road maps of the province of Ontario on my wall. Like any map that I could find is like a brochure or pamphlet I would get and look at it. My mom would make sure that we had a subscription to National Geographic, but also all the supplementary maps and atlases that you could buy. So just always really interested in geography and maps. And then along comes Google Maps, and the interface first, I think, was what really got me most interested. The fact that you could, and we take it for granted now, every map provider operates like this, but at the time, to grab the map and move it was unheard of. Your mind was just blown. So yeah. and then couple that with access to satellite imagery, right? Just even that alone was for me, the fact that I could zoom in and see Big Ben, right, in London, or the Tokyo Tower, or the CN Tower in Toronto. Like those are the first three places I explored, and that was over the top for me. So
or just like the satellite image of your house, even like, hey,
exactly,
that's what my house looks like from above.
you almost didn't even realize that you could do that, though. Like you only thought, okay, I'll go to the major tourist attractions, but then you thought, wait a minute, I can go to my town, I can go to where I'm from and see these other places. So that's sort of where it started for me, and really, with it from that point, a couple of months after Google Maps proper launched, I don't know. Should I get into the journey of how I sort of got here from there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that sort of just kind of
It
led
sets
into other
the
things.
stage a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think discovered it first there. So when you say been with the team, I feel like that's kind of where it started for me, and I got really excited about it. I thought I need to tell people about this. If anyone knows me, things that I like, I want everyone to like. So this is something that I wanted people to be as excited as I was. So I thought, okay, I'll start a blog and I'll start writing about it, and I'll share posts of things that I'm noticing. And this was a really interesting time because not many people knew about it yet, wrote about it, and then started to see a couple examples of people that were doing things with it. So Google Sightseeing was the first blog that I think really comes to mind, where people were linking to different places. Like there was like, hey, here's, like I said, here's Big Ben, here's the CN Tower. I remember giving a tip to them and saying, hey, feature the CN Tower, it's really cool. And they did a post on that. So we were kind of the two early bloggers kind of going on this. And yeah, it was like that example of just deep linking into satellite imagery. People on Flickr, the photo sharing site, were taking screenshots of their house or of memories and calling them memory maps. And so I did a post on that. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, maybe it was only about 2 weeks, a week or two, that someone by the name of Paul Rademacher, when he was looking for an apartment in San Francisco, was using Craigslist to look for housing listings, as a lot of people do, and was frustrated that there wasn't a way to visualize geographically where these apartments were. So he saw that Google had just launched Google Maps and realized that the map tiles that were serving it were available, and thought, oh, cool, I can, kind of reverse engineer this and get the map tiles and grab the housing data from Craigslist and combine it and make housing maps. And that was really the first Google Maps hack, Google Maps mashup, from a developer that was just building it out of necessity and for his needs. So that was kind of the beginning of it, and that was the first post I did on anything related to a web app or website using maps and combining data and mashing things up. So that was really the beginning of it. And so blog for a year or so, and then was invited to come join Google's first developer conference as a guest speaker. And at that event was where I chatted with someone from Google, and he invited me to submit my resume for an open role, and the rest is history. So that's sort of the way I found my way in. So
Very cool. Yeah. And
yeah,
so just going from your pure developer passion and interest in the product, and that's how we've seen many other developers join Google or other like technology companies. You become passionate about the technology, excited
absolutely.
about it, and share about it externally, which is also where we get like our Google Developer Experts program from. And because
Yeah,
we also do have Google Maps GDEs, and we are looking for more Google Maps GDEs on that.
we are. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting that you mention both the GDE community, which I'll go to in a moment, but there are, I can think of easily 5 or 10 early Maps API developers that I would write about who are now at Google and have been at Google for a long time. So there was also that, like people that were um, clearly tuned into the technology, using the APIs, and were ripe for them joining developer relations ultimately. So, but yeah, the Google Developer Experts program, we have about 15 of them around the world today, who they're really an extension of our team, of our developer relations team. So we're pretty tiny as developer relations teams go within Google, and so we really rely on helping those Google developer experts know as much as possible. We share lots of information with them, early access to information about new products, and they go out into the community and help kind of share and talk on our behalf, kind of as ambassadors of Google Maps platform. So it's a great program.
Definitely. And so anybody out there viewing, if you're interested in Google Maps and you want to apply to be a Google developer expert in Google Maps, please let us know. More than happy to have you. We're always looking for more in the GDE space. So,
Yeah.
and with that, so we did dive into a little bit more about how you joined and some of the cool experiences that kind of brought together. So what when we talk about Google Maps and we're talking about how developers, because you were talking about there's these hack mashups that were happening, and so Google kind of realized developers want to also use this. So that's when we came out with the API, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too that at that time there weren't really there just wasn't any open, freely accessible web APIs. There weren't APIs for different services or sources of data or tools at all. And really, Paul building housing maps, Adrian Holovati was probably the next person after him who created chicagocrime.org, which was doing the same thing Paul did with maps and taking open crime data about Chicago and letting you visualize that and see, by neighborhood, which again, we see that today and we think, oh, cool, that's neat. And you'll see five or 10 examples of that. At that time, it was really difficult to build that. What was interesting though is that there was tons of data that was open. Like you could get, probably one of the most disruptive, in my opinion, was political donations, right? By individual, which always existed. So you could query who was giving what to different political parties, and they would sit in tables of data. And if you were able to search it, you could search it. There was someone that just brought that to life and showed by neighborhood, by individual, by employer, which was all in there. Like all that data was there, but when you bring it to life, it was kind of a little bit of oof. Okay, let's
How close am I to this?
yeah, let's look at how open this data actually is. So it I don't know. It in terms of disruptive technology, I feel like it definitely lit up a lot of data that was already existing. So, but yeah, it was kind of a moment in time where a lot of that was coming to life. I think, yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit on that one. So
the developer API and
yeah, so sorry.
it came to be.
Yeah, at the time, just those APIs were unheard of. So for a lot of developers maybe listening or watching, the Google Maps API was the first API you might have used. And it was a nice experience too, because you got a visual feedback loop of seeing something you've done, putting a map on a pin on a map, or showing a certain place. For anyone that learning JavaScript, it's probably, in my opinion, one of the best tools. I'm a bit biased, but it's really like for new, my kids as well, I try to convince them to pick it up, but it's something that really helps you kind of visualize things, and it's gratifying, right, as a new developer to learn it. But yeah, there was no APIs at that time, and so the Google Maps API was the first, and it created this explosion, I think, of not just other mapping APIs, but also just APIs in general. So it was kind of a really interesting time, and it was really early on. It was even being done without the API, right? And so Google, looking at this before I even joined, kind of legitimized this and decided to build the API and make it possible to facilitate more of this, and to also connect with these developers that were using it and figure out how to improve it and to build it, which we're still doing today. So
definitely, and it's very appreciative, and I really like how you called out, you get that kind of automatic feedback from using the API. So like I was thinking back to like what was my first Google Maps API project, and I remember I actually started to give talks on it once I learned all the cool things I could do with the Google Maps API. Was I had found there was so many other resources out there that were using like census data information to plot things. They were using like crime data, or they're using housing data. And so I was like, I wanted to try something unique and different. And so I found a UFO Sightings database.
Oh yeah.
And then I used that, and then I plotted all the points and, kind of, tried to find patterns and stuff. And so that was like my first foray into really diving into the Google Maps JavaScript API.
Did I write a blog post about it? Did I blog about it?
You did not. I don't think so. I don't think so, at least. I did not receive any clickbacks from it, but that's okay. But there was a couple other people in the chat here. So we had like Joel here. His first project on Maps was to visualize bus stops in his town. And so that's a very cool use case.
Yeah, for sure. There was, the more offbeat examples were the ones that did the best, right? I should mention really quickly too, the blog that I'm referring to still exists. You can search back all the way to these early posts. A person by the name of Keir Clark runs it now. It's googlemapsmania.blogspot.com. Still has the original subdomain on Blogger, or just Mapsmania. If you search for that, you can find the address there. But yeah, some of the more offbeat examples were the ones that did the best. UFO sightings would have been great. You should have dropped me a line. I would have that'd have been great. And yeah. Actually, it seems very topical now. So maybe that idea. There seems to be a lot more discussion about declassification of a lot of this information. And anyway, it's
my GitHub repo still exists, but I haven't touched it in so many years, so it's a little. It's probably way out of date.
Never too late, Kyle. Never too late.
Never too late. All right.
But yeah, there was. I mean, thinking back to that time too, UFO sightings. There was a couple that kind of stood out for me early on that were a lot of fun. Like there was and oftentimes there was one that started it, and then usually 4 or 5 others riffed on it a little bit. So the probably one of my favorites is just the if you dig through the earth from any point, where do you end up, right? As a kid, you'd be in the sandbox. Your parent would tell you, if you dig through, you'll reach somewhere in Asia, somewhere else, I don't know. And it let you dispel this, myth of where you thought it would go, and exactly where it would go. And so there was a video blogger by the name of Zfrank, and he challenged his viewers on this video blog to make an Earth sandwich. So he challenged people to find a place on the Earth and then find the exact opposing place in the Earth, and get 2 people with a piece of bread on those exact opposing points on the Earth, and put a piece of bread and make an Earth sandwich.
That's awesome.
he made this sort of side with the Maps API. He made a side-by-side lineup so you could figure out where the 2 points would be, and then had them take a picture, and then he featured people making Earth sandwiches from around the world.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. There was another one. If you walk in a straight line, leave your driveway and walk in a straight line all the way around the Earth and come back, where would you where would you bump into, right? Or how far off would you be from certain things if you just kept going? Which was different take on it, right? Not going straight through, but just going around. And a lot of these things were now possible, right? To visualize and have some fun with. So there was a kind of a fun offbeat one too, is the number of counties in Ohio matched the number of piano keys on a piano. And so you could plot directions from Dayton to Cleveland and listen to the sound, or it would play a song, like a famous piano song, and you'd see the different counties lighting up as it was going through. So that was a lot of fun too. There's one that's like more important topics, like sea level rise, right? Like if sea level were to rise this many meters, what would be underwater, and the ability to like shade areas of land that would be underwater, I think again just helps the world, right? To visualize and to see and think differently about things and have different perspective. Speaking of perspective, the one my probably current favorite one, a few of those other ones I mentioned, just as web projects go, developers move on, they try different things, or the web host, shuts them down. I don't know. Like there's a lot of different reasons it's not up anymore. But one that is, it's actually built by a couple of teachers that we actually work pretty closely with in developer relations, and they've gotten a lot of attention for this tool. So we've been kind of helping them out a little bit. It's thetruesize.com, and it's really cool. You can take continents, places, and overlay them. So accounting for the Mercator projection and the way that maps are displayed, you can take Greenland and drag it down and put it over top of Alabama, or a place that you're familiar with, and kind of see. Also, you can see how much smaller Greenland becomes as you move it from the North Pole down to another point on the Earth. So it's thetruesize.com. It's a really neat site. A lot of fun. So.
Very cool. And so, like, from all of this, there's been a lot of fun, interesting projects that have really kicked off interest in maps. Mm-hmm. And how we consume the visual data and overlapping, with the different geographical points. Um, what's come up a lot more recently is a lot of like the Places API, and to where it's a lot more business focused, to where
Yeah.
not only was it cool to see where things are in the world, but now it's making what Google does, search accessible. So it's like, where is the local taco place, or where can I go find a good cheeseburger at this time?
Absolutely.
That kind of
Yeah, I
stuff.
think it really, all the examples that I'm showing you now are talking about now were really when the base map was exposed, right? There was,
Right.
and it was up to you to go and find data to put on it. But we would give you the base map to work with. It's absolutely moved along to, and it depends on the use case, but a lot of these, all of these at the beginning were hobbyists. They were developers just trying things out and seeing how they could exercise the API and learn JavaScript, build projects. It definitely, over the course of the 16 years that it's been around, it's moved into something a little bit more serious. If you think about, just look at, Google Maps originally, when it launched on mobile, was called Google Local, right? That was the original name of the mobile, like what we know as Google Maps on your phone, launched as Google Local. So the moving from just the map itself to Google's knowledge of the real world being brought to you via the Places API or via Google Maps platform APIs. So that's now where a lot of people will use the Places API to facilitate a search, like you said, just like you would if you were to search Google, either through search or through maps, right? And so how could you move some of that functionality into an application someone's building so they can also allow a user to search on the map? And it might not even be specifically local focused, but local search focused, but having that search functionality there in case people need it is super important. So
definitely. And it also got me thinking about, because I was still pondering the sea level rise or floodplain that you were mentioning. So we also have topographical that has been added over time as well, to where not only do you have just the visual flat, now you have, or the satellite, we now have different forms of mapping that are available to developers as well.
Absolutely, yeah. There's the terrain view, which just as a visual map type will give you some of the topography context there, and elevation in the API as well, to give you some sense of height, not just lat long, but also where within that lat long are you in terms of elevation. And there's lots of new things that we're working toward that have launched recently. We'll maybe talk about a little bit later, that gives you more of that dimensionality of what you see in the map, and where in terms of not just on a flat map top down, but where are you in the context of that 3D space. So yeah,
definitely. We did have a couple questions come in here already. And again, reminder, everyone, feel free to drop questions in the live chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I believe this one was referring back to our GDE criteria. So this comes from Moab. Basic criteria is, are you looking for people who are already in the GIS background, or what kind of experiences are you looking for here?
Yeah, I think definitely if you hail from a GIS background, ideally, even more so, just Google Maps API, Google Maps platform background. I think we try to look carefully and really certify knowledge, and have you sort of answer some questions and go through a bit of a vetting process, so that we can see that you're not just passively knowledgeable, but really knowledgeable. So I think that's essentially the Mohab, just to answer your question, just that we do go through a vetting process, and the idea would be that you know Google Maps platforms, APIs, SDKs inside and out. And so we would go through that process with you to ask some questions and say, All right, you're ready. This is you know more than I do about this. so so yeah, that just as a general summary, Mohab, that's how we look at it.
Yeah. A few other things to tack on to there. We also look for community contributions. So are you
Yes.
sharing this? Are you writing blogs? Are you open sourcing code, creating your
Yeah,
own code labs, for example, giving talks? So we also look for these community contributions as well.
that's a really good point. Yeah, not just knowledgeable about the product, but are community contributions. Are you in the community today? So that you can combine that knowledge of this Google technology with the community that you're present in. So
yeah, if you haven't been giving talks yet, there is DevFest season coming up within our Google
oh, yeah.
Developer Group community. So there's a lot of good opportunities, for first-time speakers. So look up your DevFest, find your local GDG, convince them to host a DevFest. It's a great opportunity to learn more about different technologies, including Google Maps.
Love DevFest season.
Yeah, we have another one here from Al. So this is, feel free to how you want to answer this one, because
Sure.
since Google has acquired Waze, how do they integrate and share data from what you can share with us?
Yeah, I would say thanks for the question, Al. I think first of all, Google Maps when I say consumer, I mean non-developer. So you using Google Maps on desktop or on your phone. Google Maps and Waze are different apps, and a lot of people don't know that Waze is a part of Google. It is intentionally meant to be a separate experience. I think if just the way I've always thought of Google Maps and Waze is that typically Google Maps is for when you don't know where you're going, and Waze is for when you do know where you're going and you're trying to optimize it, right? Through the power of community, just like we were talking about it a moment ago. There's just a super active community of Waze users that help people tell information about the places they're going, and oftentimes it's optimizing a route you're used to. I'm not saying that you can't use Waze for figuring out where you're going. It's still a very reliable source for that. But yeah, so I think that just to talk about that a little bit, I think the places where, first of all, Waze as a consumer service doesn't really have a sense of a developer platform like Google Maps does. If you think about Google Maps on the consumer surface, Google Maps platform is how lots of parts of Google Maps is syndicated and exposed to you as a developer. Not as much the case with Waze. There are definitely ways that Waze is being utilized, within different municipalities and different local governments around the world. But it's a little bit more of a direct kind of partnership that's struck between Waze and that entity. So it's a little bit different than the Maps API and Maps platform. So I think just to answer your question though, on the consumer side, the one place where there is data that is shared, you'll see it on in traffic incidents. So you can usually see that the incident that you're seeing perhaps in your navigation view on Maps has come via Waze. So if the threshold of people reporting an incident in Waze is so high, that will actually get shared across to Google Maps and will show up in your navigation or your traffic plots that you're seeing. So that's one place where the data is shared back and forth. And there's lots of stuff sort of on the quote back end where people are like where the platforms are sharing data, but that's for a user, that's probably the most obvious.
Yeah, which this brings up a good point that many people, as you were explaining, there's the developer side of Google Maps with the Google Maps platform, and then you had the consumer side of Google Maps. Can you walk us through a little bit just to kind of add a little bit more clarity between the two here?
Absolutely. So there's Google Maps on your phone. There's Google Maps on the web. There's Google Earth on your phone and on the web. Those are two separate things as well. Two different services. Much of the same map data you'll see. Earth is going to give you a little bit more of an immersive. Just to carry on with the Waze is for when you know where you're going. Google Maps is where you don't know where you're going. Google Earth is for when you want to get lost. So that's kind of how I've always thought about Earth. It's really interactive, massive atlas you crack open and just dive in and explore the world. So that's I would say that's the way to kind of differentiate those three. But yeah, there's a consumer surface, and then we try our best to give you as much as possible from what you use as a user via Google Maps platform. So if you want satellite maps, if you'd like Street View, if you want access to the place data, all of that is possible through Google Maps platform. So there are obviously terms and ways that we give you access to that. For example, we don't allow you to download all the data and store it on your side. And lots of folks would like to do that, to do analysis and that sort of thing. In some cases, it's data restrictions from third parties that we license the data to provide to end users and to developers. And so there's some guidelines to kind of work within, but we try to make it as generous as possible. But that's the kind of difference. And really, it's the same data source, right, within Google, and it's just kind of going off to different places where you might use it as a user, as a developer, or as an end user of something a developer has built, right? So you're kind of getting access to the same thing. It's just coming in different forms.
It looks like Google Maps, but another developer has put together so like the Earth sandwich kind of where, yeah. So it's still Google Maps, but it's a developer who took the API and made a layer on top.
That's right. I mean, the way to everything I just explained, you can look at the bottom left usually and see the Google logo and know that you're on a Google map. Also, you can see where the data is coming from. If it's data that Google itself has built out, you'll see Google as an attribution. You might also see some other companies, especially in satellite imagery, where you can actually see the company that has tasked the satellite, taken the picture that Google's licensed from, and we highlight who that is in the bottom ribbon. Google Earth, it's much easier to see it in Google Earth. The text is a little bit bigger too. So
yeah, there's only so much real estate that you have on a mobile device or on your web screen. So
that's right.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Awesome. Continue to ask questions in the chat. These are some great questions, sparking up some great conversation here. I do have another one here from Chaba. He's looking for help with GPS-based cloud anchors. Earth-based cloud anchors from AR Core on Android, and so not sure if he should reach out to an AR Core DevRel or Map DevRel to kind of direct his question here. And he has a follow-up here to shine a little bit more, where you talked about he's intrigued by the mashups that you were. So he's thinking like a Maps Earth AR mashup.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, that'd be love it. So I'm not sure how I say your first name.
Chaba.
Chaba, thank you. So Chaba, on your first question, I'm not as familiar with cloud anchors, but would love to connect you. You're right. It would be probably a combination of someone in developer relations for AR Core. I would love to help you connect with the right person though. So if my Twitter handle is @mpeg. And if you just direct message me there, I can absolutely try to connect you with the right person. And would just love to see kind of what you're thinking about too, what you're trying to build. And I think there's definitely an AR component there. There's a location component. Just thinking on the fly, I'd probably like to sit down and take a closer look at what you're trying to build and what components, both from the Maps platform side, but also the AR Core side, just to make sure I'm answering the question right. But yeah, get in touch and I'd love to help.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully that helps you there, Chaba. But great question. And yeah, definitely keep the questions coming. There's some really cool and interesting stuff that I'm sure all of you are excited about, because I've been seeing a lot of other comments about, "Ooh, I want to use Google Maps in the next hackathon," or I'm really excited to use Google Maps in XYZ project. So hopefully we'll have a lot more exciting things to share with you as the time comes. But as the link we have shown up on the screen, how do developers really get started? Where would you? What was the first thing that you say that they should really get if they want to dive into Google Maps?
So the first thing I want to point out for developers that are listening in is we've just tried to. We have a lot of resources. So you'll see a lot of links, short links that are kind of popping up as we're going along. we have tried to organize all of those resources into one place. Prior, we had a good, like our documentation page was fully featured. It had every piece of documentation you needed, but there was lots of other resources that were kind of hard to put on a documentation front page. So what we've done is we've created a landing page for all things developer resources, just developers.google.com/maps, and everything you need is listed there. So anything from this point forward, go there first, look through the page, and everything will be there. There was a link that was on there just before the goo.goal short link. Yeah, there it is, maps-platform/get started, and really encourage you even just to take a peek at what's involved, even if you're not actually getting started today. Essentially, this helps you look through the steps of how you essentially get a key, set up a project, choose the different parts of Maps platform that you want to use in your project, how you provision those on our console, and get going. So we obsess about the steps that are in this, exactly what you need to do. Nothing extra, just get to the point and get going quickly. So that's the place to go to set up a first project, or like I said, add things to an existing project that you might have.
Awesome. Very cool. And there are a lot of other code labs that we have as well available. codelabs.google.com, or sorry, codelabs.developers.google.com is where you can find a lot of our code labs. Or yeah, we have the link here, the short link here, to find more code labs around Google Maps. There's lots of blogs and documentation. Mike, you mentioned your blog earlier with just a lot of fun examples of things that people have done.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to see, excuse me, just examples of what people have built. Thanks, Kyle, too, for detailing a little bit more about what's included on that page. Place to get started, but on /maps, all the links to the things that Kyle was mentioning. So we have 1,200 pages of documentation, the maps documentation, and we help you find it all. Don't worry. Hopefully, it's all well organized and architected in a way that is easy for you. That's across all 13 of our APIs and SDKs. I mean, obviously, if you're on one of 3 platforms, on web, Android, or iOS, that number shrinks. It's not 1,200 per platform.
It narrows down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But another resource that I just really quickly wanted to point out is just our YouTube channel. Kind of goes without saying, where here we are on YouTube right now, but Google Maps platform, there it is, on YouTube, has just a lot of, we try and again make it as succinct as possible. There's 5-minute, 12-minute, longer too, just quick snippets that you can kind of look through as you hear different topics today, kind of dive in. And members of the Maps platform developer relations team, over the past year or so, just like I am here at home, have recorded tons and tons of content for you to help you get going with stuff. So yeah, Twitter, blog, everything's listed there. And I think Stack Overflow, it again might go without saying, but our Stack Overflow community is extremely vibrant. It is because the platform has been around for so long. A lot of questions have been asked and a lot of questions have been answered. And so typically anything that you're going through, if you, and the links are from there as well, just look up Google Maps and Stack Overflow, and the question you have is most likely there, answered, voted up, will help you out there too. So.
Definitely awesome. And this is also where, if you know of anybody in the Stack Overflow community or anybody like that is, these could be great Google developer experts that we can bring up out, highlight in the community and potentially get them to be speakers at various events as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's we're in there. GDEs are in there. People in the community are in there. It's kind of the best example of a community coming to life, I think.
Definitely. We did have earlier in the comments, there was a couple of folks that were giving some praise and accolades to how good the documentation is for Google Maps APIs. So, so a little bit of props to you and your team.
Thank you. Yeah, it's again because that documentation's been there so long. We do pride ourselves on the quality of that. We've heard that from a lot of people. makes us feel great. We're not done. We're if there's ever things that are not clear, I think there's lots of places within just developers.google.com in any piece of documentation that you can leave feedback. We take that feedback extremely seriously. And because of the volume of it, we are hopefully able to get with so much feedback, get the docs in a good place. But if you come across something that's not clear or it's missing, file a bug and we will take a look at it and try to improve it. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Typically the feedback button is in the bottom right whenever you're looking at the docs. And so if you're needing to file a bug, that's where you would do that at.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, so we talked a little bit about, how you got started, your interest in maps, the evolution of the API, how it went from hack projects to developer need, growth into, all of this data that is now accessible for developers and consumers. And which kind of leads to, there was a lot of cool announcements made at Google I/O this year. Can you,
for sure.
Highlight and dive into those a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the early days kind of graduating through to where we are today, I think before we talk about some of those announcements, I think just the maturity of just location in general, like the technologies, the like what's possible with them, and really the entire new industries that are possible because of it, right? If you think about ride sharing and choose your favorite, right? If it's a Lyft or an Uber, of choose a country, and in some cases it's a regional name that's not in one country versus another. But just think about what would not be possible, right? From some of the things that have been created. A lot of the sure, there's been pizza delivery forever, but the sophistication that now these companies can have to optimize this and to figure out which places the person needs to go. I think the maturity in the way that businesses and enterprise have now relied on this, and how this is not just a tangential thing within a company's offering or service, but it's the thing, right? So, and we take that really seriously, and I think us as a company and as a part of Google have also matured as we moved along. So, not taking for granted the reliability that people require and demand of a service that they're really basing their entire company on, is just something I want to just point out really quickly. So, I think there's definitely still hobbyists though. And we want that.
Oh, sure.
I think that those are the people, those are the developers that are kind of pushing those new industries, because they were the ones that were prototyping and building a lot of those things before a lot of these companies even existed today. So, we're really excited to keep giving new things to people to keep pushing things forward. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I was going to add in another big thing that's happened a lot more recently with IoT and the speed of connectivity is asset tracking, and being able to, as a company, know where your assets are, your vehicles are, this kind of thing has really helped in having Google Maps and Google Cloud kind of partnered together there with the reliability to know where their products are and that kind of thing, or products
Absolutely.
or assets.
Yeah, I think if you take a cloud backend entity like GCP or Google Cloud Platform, and basically combine that with a location front end, so that all that data is able to be managed better. Lots of it too in larger scale. But yeah, asset tracking is probably one of the first enterprise use cases. So I have all these things. There's a location associated with them. Where are they? How can I allocate them? How can I move them around? How can I know where they are? And do that efficiently. Distance matrix API is probably one of my favorites. It allows you to take many different points, the traveling salesperson solver kind of concept, and figure out, okay, if I'm starting here, where do I go? And you can do that as a consumer as well when you plot directions to multiple points. The same sort of thing is given to developers to work within oftentimes a fleet tracking or asset tracking scenario too. So, okay, so announcements from I/O. So I'm really, really, really excited about these things. Many people at Google pen announcement blog posts with, today I'm excited to announce. These are things that get me very excited, and a lot of folks on the team. And I think first of all, the map that people have been building upon for 16 years has largely not changed in terms of some of the things that are possible. While on the consumer side, things have kind of moved ahead. So the map that you would use as an end user hasn't always necessarily been something that we've been able to give to developers. So I think probably just to start with, one of the first announcements that I'll talk about is just the ability to customize the map, right? So to look at all of the colors, the whether it's watercolor or road color, or just even the density of a map that's being displayed for a user. We've had some basic functionality that's let you edit that, not in a very convenient way that's easy to manage. So cloud-based map styling is one of the first announcements that we've made GA, generally available, and that again, the cloud-based prefix there is the important one. It used to be possible to set some instructions and then put it in JSON and deploy it. Now with a map ID functionality, you can the map ID is like when it calls the map ID, when the map loads, it looks at a set of instructions that you're managing on a cloud backend, if you will. And so a lot of those instructions you can set and really just make the map your own, right? So if you've got some hex colors for a brand, like very specific colors that you want to match, if you've got a page that's loading, if you just picture a desktop web page, to match the colors of the map with the colors that you're also displaying in that user experience is something that's super important. We've just had a lot of fun. We've done like some really crazy like vaporwave, turn the color super bright turquoise and the map, black ground color, and then like hot pink colors for the roads. Like you go all Tron on some of the like it really is a lot of fun.
My mind was going.
Exactly. So there's just a ton of fun you can have, but also in a more enterprise focused environment, you can match the colors to your brand and to the user experience that you're trying to build. So so cloud-based map styling is something that's like I said, just moved ahead from what was possible before. So definitely encourage you to check that out. I think the second big one is really us exposing the vector map. So just as a quick overview, to date, we've provided raster maps. And so raster maps basically will give you the squares, the tiles, and assemble all those tiles together in a raster format. Exposing the vector map basically provides so much more dimensionality in terms of how the map, like all the elements on the map are being drawn at the same time. It's not just a square or a tile, but the fidelity within that is all being sort of developed or sort of drawn at the same time. So exposing, and by the way, the vector map is what you use in a consumer sense. So we're now giving the same functionality to developers via this new beta access to a vector map and to see what's possible with it. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that kind of go within this, but that's the first way I would kind of explain to start it, is that the vector maps giving you so much more that's possible that was never something you could do. So first of all, the tilt and rotation of the map wasn't possible to do. You could do it on Google Maps. You could hit Control or Shift with your mouse or trackpad and kind of move and look around. This now is possible with the vector map. Camera control, so the ability to create a fly-in effect of the tilt and rotation, everything happening at the same time. It used to be you could only do one of those things at a time, but now the smooth like 60 frames per second functionality that's possible, just really performance smooth. It's very, very noticeable, the difference between the two, between raster and vector. So yeah, the tilt and rotation is one, and also just Webgl acceleration is also super important here. I would just say, as example links come up, here I am trying to like put a lot of this into words. There's a really good travel demo that we built for IO, or the Webgl tour demo, if some of those links are possible to show. That will let you step through a lot of these things that I'm trying to explain. But Webgl basically just gives the browser access to the GPU within the client device at the end. So it will allow new functionality for 2D, not just 2D, but 3D objects to actually be drawn on the map. And so as you tilt and rotate the map, you get access to some of the building footprints again, that if you're looking straight down, the 3D building models kind of come to life as you start to tilt and rotate the map, and you see the buildings, the skyline. You can add a marker that as you move around the city or 3D buildings, there's an occlusion effect that puts the pin behind the building. It really is kind of a see to believe experience, but it's again, things that we were never able to offer to developers unless we had the vector map exposed. And so with some of the features that you might see on Google Maps, we're now going to be able to extend those into the future easier. Before, with a raster map, it just wasn't possible with the type of technology that was being served. So this is a really big jump for the JavaScript Maps API. And so yeah, just really excited about it. And we're very early days. Webgl isn't a trivial piece of technology, so we're really trying to help people with resources and to ourselves, build with it and see what we can do to help via samples and extra things that we can help people kind of move along with it. So, but we think that the possibilities of it are huge. So it's really, really exciting. Definitely, that's a very good code lab as well that just popped up.
This one, yeah, and it's very cool, and I can see you getting excited about it because this is kind of reminiscent about the early days with the Google Maps API, because it's like we don't know what everybody's going to do with it. So very excited to see all these hack projects, like what are hobbyists going to do with it, what can businesses do with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of how we set out when we were trying to launch it, to envision, what would a demo look like that could bring all these features to life without having examples to point to. It's hard to visualize how it could look. Even this morning, we saw an example of Mini, the car company, using it to. I haven't, literally a couple of minutes before we jumped on, someone sent me the link, but I think it looks like probably one of the bigger brand examples of people starting to use this in a similar way of just letting people explore an area. And I should probably try and figure out a little bit more about what they're doing, but it's the minimapofbiglove.com. So minimapofbiglove.com. So they're kind of showing how some of this 3D tilt rotation exploration that I was talking about is kind of coming to life. It's really cool. So
interesting. Yeah, we'll have to check that out. Yeah, because that's brand new to me as well. I haven't seen this one yet. So very cool. So you heard it here first, folks.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So any other questions that any of you have, feel free to ask. We are going to be wrapping up here soon, but we've had a lot of great questions thus far, learned a lot of cool things with Google Maps. We've seen a lot of love for all the new stuff that's been announced with Google I/O, that was announced at Google I/O, I should say. So there's a lot of new stuff to learn, a lot of new stuff to consume. So I'm sure there's not a lot of questions on it just yet, but yeah. So there's what are some things that you would like to see developers build out? What's something you haven't seen yet that you think would be really cool to see some developer tackle?
Yeah, I think it well, some of it goes back to your UFO sighting map and the ideas that I have to visualize things. I think there a lot. What's interesting to point out here, I think, is a lot of the early examples of the Maps API were things that you didn't know you needed, or you didn't know you would think so differently about as if someone doing it. So I think the data visualization possibilities that exist with exposure to the vector map, Webgl technology within that vector map. There's an open source data visualization library called deck.gl which this now supports, that allows you to visualize things and to showcase a lot of the, again, back to the days of some of that data being unlocked. I think that this technology now allows a step change of new visualizations, new maps experiences that, again, were never possible. And I'm excited for what developers do as people ramp up on learning WebGL, and to look at what possibilities exist and to bring some of that stuff to life, because it's gorgeous stuff. Like when you see some of the data visualization that's possible with Google Maps Platform and deck.gl, which, by the way, just deck.gl is the domain to go to look at how this stuff comes to life. You can combine that library with Google Maps Platform to create just amazing things. So I think that to me, data viz is just, it blows your mind when it's good, right?
Yeah.
When the data source and the thing that you're looking at, it's pretty, it's fun to explore. So for me, I'm most excited about that, and to see kind of what people bring to life. Very similar to how people brought things to life from text and tables, right, with the Maps API in the early days. I just love that experience of like seeing a screenshot of something, clicking on it, and just whoa, like that kind of feeling of loving and seeing what someone's built. So
definitely, there's a lot of amazing projects out there. Feel free to I'm going to go ahead and throw you out there, tag Mike's Twitter, mpeg. Follow him. So if you have an interesting Google Maps project that you've worked on, hack together, definitely. And then you can include the Google Maps, the official Google Maps as well.
Yeah, I'm actively, monitoring replies to that as well as folks in our team. So yeah, Gmaps Platform or at mpeg. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Very cool. So, and with that, I don't see any other questions. Just a lot of thanks so much for enjoying, sharing a lot here. And so that's it for this month's episode of Between the Brackets. Hope all of you enjoyed learning about the Google Maps platform and a lot of new interesting stuff and history about the Google Maps platform and product. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Mike, for joining us today and sharing a lot of your history around Google Maps and a lot of the new exciting things that are coming out.
You have to promise me that you're going to build a WebGL powered UFO sighting map.
Oh,
it's got to be done.
I'll get on that. I still have the data source tucked away somewhere. I'll have to dust that off and see if they've made any updates to it.
let me know if you need any help.
That we'll do. So thank you again so much, Mike. It was a pleasure having you. And I also want to thank Danny and Medusha, who are backstage helping run click all the buttons and run everything there. So join us again next time as we dive beyond the dev docs and explore new and interesting developer topics with the experts. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here and also fill out our survey, goo.gle/btb/-survey. Let us know what you thought and what you'd like to see next. And thank you again for stopping by. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Happy mapping. See ya.